Good evening, as the great Alfred Hitchcock would say. Good evening, or perhaps good early morning to you. Welcome to a special Marvel movie talk. We are talking more Eternals, and we are talking Eternals with the spoilers. I am Christian Bladt, and as you see right below me, joined now to talk about Eternals with all the spoilers, the Eternal Eric Conner, Count Eric Conner. Eric, great to see you. Glad to have
Pleasure.
you back on the show.
A pleasure. It is. I felt a hole in my soul, or a hole here, like I lost my gold orb without
A
you, and now the orb is returned to my chest.
a Blatt-sized hole that has now been filled, and I must say that I am honored to fill your hole. So welcome to the show. And Eric, we previously had a conversation. I went to a very fancy press screening with our friends Jeff and Elena. We talked a lot about it, but I want you overall thoughts, the expectations going into Eternals, and your thoughts once you actually saw it.
All right. So, how many Eternals episodes have you done? By the way, where am I in the
You
pantheon?
are in the second, and at the
Oh,
end
okay.
of this broadcast, I will announce what we have something very special for tomorrow, which will be our third. But
Ah,
yes,
I'm the creamy center, if you will.
You are the Oreo double stuff.
Oh yeah, if not triple. I had very low expectations going in. This is one where my sons have been talking about the Rotten Tomato scores nonstop for this one. The second it went below 60%, it like set off like a five alarm in my house. And my 10-year-old doesn't even know what the heck a Rotten Tomato is in real life or on the web, and yet he was panicking. And then we go and see this movie, and they liked it, but I thought there was something really special about this one. Now, it is not going to fall in my top 5 MCUs, or probably even top 10, but there's something to be said about all the things they did here. And once again, I mean, Kevin Feige and the whole MCU crew, like, they're playing it safe is not their thing. I mean, they take big swings with these things, and they find interesting performers, interesting storytellers. I thought the cinematography on this one was really stunning. Like, I absolutely loved the look of so much of it. I trust me, especially as a writer, as someone who teaches writing, I'm like, where the hell is the antagonist? Why is this so episodic? All that definitely raced through my head as I watched it, but I tell you, I I really enjoyed this. I'm really I don't know. I don't know if I would be running to see Eternals 2, but I hope it's not the last I see some of these characters, because I found myself really drawn to a number of them, including, of course, my newest Happy Meal toy, as in Happy Meal toy stolen from one of my sons. Don't tell them. I'm going to put it back without their noticing it, I hope.
It's a sad meal for them now because there's
Yeah,
no toy with it. But
no, it's definitely ennui meal now. I think
the
that's the new
the
branding.
McDonald's ennui meal, yes. I hope that your house is filled with ennui meals.
Always.
Uh, in any case, yeah, I think that this was, even people who weren't as impressed by the movie are giving credit to the fact that it was a very big swing. I think having an ensemble film with really 10 cast members is a lot.
Yeah.
And, I think that it is a very different movie. This is not going to appeal to everyone who enjoyed, say, the first Avengers. And, this isn't for everybody who likes every big blockbuster, summer slash, I guess, November movie, whatever. But it's not for everyone. It's not as accessible as a lot of the MCU stuff. I've been saying since I first saw it, and let me know if you agree with this. It's the Dune of superhero movies. There's just so much
Yeah.
to it. It's so in depth. You have to pay attention. But if you do pay attention and you think about it, you will be rewarded by just a very rich story that's spans more than 7,000 years. I think that there are some great characters, many of whom get to have some laughs along the way. They get to provide us with some laughs, that is. And yeah, I think that I'm impressed really with how well it came together. And I think that for the most part, I'm really impressed by the characters, that we're able to get to know them as well as we do when you consider that there's so many of them, even with it being 2 hours and 47 minutes, you know. So I think
And I
that,
wasn't bored. I mean, like,
yeah,
I didn't feel the runtime. I didn't look at my Apple Watch. Occasionally my Apple Watch looked at me, I believe, but that's my own issues.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
your Apple Watch is trying to convince you. Shouldn't you be at home watching Ted Lasso or C, starring starring Jason Momoa? You know, they're always trying to remind you what content. Like, hey, should you stop by the Apple Bar on the way home and get a dongle or two? I get it. That's
Speaking of Mythic Quest,
I just yeah, so let's go into some of the specifics, some of the things that really stood out for you in terms of, favorite characters, favorite moments, really anything like that, some of the stuff that really stuck with you with the film.
Kumail Nanjiani, or I apologize for butchering his name. I've never had to say it out loud, I realize, in my life, and now I have, and
Yeah.
I ruined it. Uh, my I adored him in this. Like, he shows up, and he just with one look, I'm like, I was like, when did he? So I went with my kids and a friend of ours, and I turned to her. I'm like, when did he get hot? She's like, well, you saw him shirtless. Like, he kept posting those photos. I'm like, yeah, but more than that, like his presence, like he shows up, and just that look of the razor. Yeah, he had like the Dwayne Johnson rock people's eyebrow thing going once or twice, and I found him so charming and fun, and it was one of those, like, thank God they had him. Like, this movie, like, could have choked on its own ambitions, and it was so helpful having him, and I have to look up these character names, I have to admit, because I remember none of them. Fastos, all with the weird spellings too, like Icarus with an I, I'm sorry, with a Karis. I'm confused about, but Brian Tyree Henry as Fastos, I thought. Also, he showed up, and I mean, a same-sex couple in MCU, of course, a same-sex kiss, but there's so much more to him than just he is playing, a character who's gay. He is so fascinating, and his, like, guilt over what he himself single-handedly might have brought upon with Hiroshima, which I was like, wow, that is going
That Yeah,
deep.
they went really deep, and they went
Jesus.
really dark and gave us something to think about,
And it worked. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually was, like, feeling for him in a way that was like, wow, like, that's, I mean, this is not popcorn films, which is good because I've been avoiding eating popcorn in movie theaters, because of, that thing you might have heard of called COVID.
Well, I don't know if you know that popcorn is actually the ultimate protection from COVID. Instead of getting a booster vaccine, you should actually just eat more popcorn. I'm pretty sure that was a study from the Orville Redenbacher
Right,
Institute
right, right. That's the
on
that's the
health.
shot I got. My booster was Orville Redenbacher.
Yeah, it was just the squirtings from the butter pump there.
I
Uh,
put it in my vein.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, look, there's no movie that I've been to in a movie theater that it wasn't a popcorn movie for me. But I know what you're saying. This is definitely a little bit different than some of your more traditional fare. I absolutely agree with that assessment. So yeah, and I think having Kamal Nanjiani just right away, I said this earlier, that I think that he, within seconds, I was like, this is why they cast him. He's so
Yeah.
perfect for this character. He's so perfect in this role. He, balances all the aspects of it. But yeah, and then, he brought humor. Fastos brought humor, and there's just so much to it. Was there anything, we're gonna sort of cover all the big areas. We're going to paint with a very broad brush because your time is limited here. What were some things that, as you think back on it, that maybe didn't work for you as well as other things? Were there characters? Were there situations? What was that for you? Perhaps the things that didn't connect with you.
I had no issue with her performance, but I thought if you have Angelina Jolie in a Marvel movie, this is what you give her. Like I feel like she has such talent, and it's just like seemed like she really got wasted. Because I thought her character was interesting, but I'm curious, and I'm by the way, I'm glad that Gemma Chen was the lead. I like Cersei. I liked her arc as a character. But something about having one of the Eternals front and center who's perpetually losing her mind. I think there's just so much more they could have done with her, and it really seemed like a wasted opportunity to have an actor of that caliber in a real like a supporting role that could have been played by so many different people. Like it feels like just untapped. What happened? I mean, what are your thoughts on her?
Yeah,
Or
I think
Thena,
that
not Athena, just Thena, right?
you're Justina. They made that very clear. I think that it is sort of like exactly what you said. I was like, wait, Angelina Jolie was in this movie. Why did she, not really do much? And I mean, it is an interesting choice. And then I guess, depending on what you might see from the character in the future, maybe it'll all make sense that this is where she was at in this one. But I think maybe one more sweet badass action sequence with her would have been nice. But yeah, I think that I was surprised, and remember we're talking about all the spoilers. I was surprised at how quickly we lost Ajak, how quickly we lost Selma Hayek. I was just like, oh, okay. So, and we saw her some in flashbacks after that, but I was like, oh, I was not expecting her, and it was like, it's interesting because, they are the two biggest stars in the movie. And, in some incarnations of the poster, they're the biggest ones on the poster. And then they're not really in it that much, which is interesting. But as I said before, I was very pleasantly surprised that Gemma Chan was the lead, and that I don't know. I just think she did a great job, as this character who, we don't know the character. We're not as familiar with her. I mean, we haven't seen her in much. I mean, I mentioned previously that, by being in Captain Marvel, that could very well have meant that she would not have been in any other MCU projects. And the fact that
Mhm,
they didn't let that slow them down, I think is great, and she was rewarded for that. So yeah, I had said that I had a problem with Icarus. I found him to be just really dull and sort of like kind of dragging everything down. I mean, he was in a situation, the character, where he had to sort of be at odds with everything. But the comparison to Superman was very funny, but it's also like he
yeah.
kind of felt like Henry Cavill, who I always felt like, maybe drag things down a little bit more than than he could have, than he needed to. But yeah, so I think that those were surprising, but it was more than made up for the fact that we had characters who I thought were great. I mean, I thought that Sprite was
Yeah.
really a great addition. Leah McHugh is that actress's name, and just did such a great idea. I mean, when she asks, why did he make me this way? Why is she
Mhm,
stuck being a kid? It was just like, yeah, that's incredibly, it goes back to the what you said earlier. It's such a deep and a dark thing to deal with, and just what it would be like to be stuck as a kid for 7,000 years or more, really. Um, and we don't really get a good sense for for why that is. And yeah, I thought that you were talking about how Fastos had this idea in his head of having to deal with, here's what I wrought in the way of Hiroshima,
mhm,
and then Druid gets a similar thing of like all the things that I could have stopped throughout history, and I was told not to, and then
mhm.
finding out that sort of their mission was a bit of a sham, that then probably it makes it that much more infuriating. So I think that sort of dealing with these dilemmas, these really heavy sort of like angsty things, for both of them. I thought were really impressive.
Yeah, and I agree. Like they're not thinking small in this one. I guess when you call it Eternals, and you from the jump, they really were going huge. And in a way, it's funny. I was thinking like, remember the beginning of X-Men Apocalypse, where it had kind of a similar thing, but it felt like, I don't know, if Brett Ratner directed an Egyptian kind of epic, and like it like started that on the complete wrong foot,
Yeah.
and seeing what happens when you do have someone behind the camera and have the storytellers that could kind of craft this in a way that it feels both big and small, epic and intimate.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a real strength of the storytelling, was even though they were setting it against these massive backdrops, like it never really lost most of the characters. And by the way, very much agree about Icarus. Like, how can the person who's the most powerful be the most dull? No, that takes a trick.
Yeah,
That's a
that
real.
does take the trick. We fit the bill of most dull, but our most powerful panelist is now
Yes.
joining us.
Yes.
The one and only
Hang
Kaitlin
on, hang on.
Cornell. And this is the ultimate flex, showing us like, yeah, I got a ceiling fan. What of it? Oh, now it's
Because I
gone.
had to do the Icarus.
Yeah,
shot.
you did
I
have
had
to
to
do
do the
Icarus.
come.
Well,
Why?
Kate, we've been talking some sort of big picture stuff, and we've got Eric for about 10 more minutes. But so I'll let you sort of
Hi.
chime in with some big stuff. Just expectations going in, your overall feeling watching the movie, and as you think back. And by the way, now that you're here, Daniel, Drew in the chat, Kate, that's better. So now apparently the show is much better.
We were told there would be Kate. There is no
Yeah,
Kate.
exactly.
Oh wait,
Hi,
we had Kate.
Sputicus.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
I didn't
Yes.
get a
promise
single
I'm okay.
exclamation point. I didn't even get a fucking comma.
No. Yeah. I was italicized, so that's what they think of me. But yes. So anyway, Kate, overall expectations, thoughts during watching the movie, and then as you think about it after the fact.
Okay, so oh my god. All right, so we're gonna get to the costumes in a second because I couldn't quite wrap my head around it, and I want all of them. Like, I need there to be like a line at like Nordstrom's where I can just grab one. But I had very little expectations of the movie. I knew where I knew what the story was watching the trailers, but I was like not jazzed by it. I wasn't enthused by it. But I also know Chloe's work as a director, and she likes to track outsiders, and she likes to kind of do slower movies. So I was trying to see like how would that directing style fit with what we think of Marvel. And the end of the movie, watching it, I was actually really jazzed. But I wasn't sure if I was jazzed because we got some extra, nuggets of the mid credits and the end credit sequence. And I was like, oh, I'm pumped for the next thing. But I at the end of the movie, when the credits started to roll, I was like, that was a really beautiful movie. And Marvel hasn't really done a beautiful movie. They've had action-packed movies, they've had thrilling movies, they've had character-driven movies, they've had sad endings, they've had character deaths, but that was a really beautifully done, really beautifully shot story. And I had a thought, and I don't know if it's right, that the flashback sequence at the beginning after the opening crawl, I thought that was supposed to be done to when what's her name? What's her name?
It's hard to keep track, so I'm not sure who
Yeah,
you're
I have
talking about. There's like 5 of them. So
Cersei.
which her are you speaking of?
Cersei, Thena, Ajax.
when Cersei's explaining to Kit Harington's character,
Dane Whitman,
Dane Whitman.
whom we'll discuss.
We'll discuss him at length. I feel like that was supposed to be like, I was wondering what it would be like if they started in London and then explain like we are the Eternals.
Right.
But
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
also the idea of like starting with this like very almost biblical, like in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and like in the beginning the Celestials created all this shit, and then have that be the lie. Like, you believe from the beginning of, like, this is the way everything goes, from the opening crawl to this thing, and, like, it's almost solidified in, like, this weird version of, like, Marvel Fact. Like, you're going into this, like, tome. And and then when you find out it's not true, you feel like something has been taken away from you as well. So you're on the same level as the characters. And it was an interesting way to do a story like that, as opposed to just being like, wait, you're all superheroes? Where it's like, we know what movie we're in. We're watching the Eternals.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that the way that I was saying this earlier, the way that so much information is given to you so early, that's kind of what I'm referring to when it's like,
Yeah.
the movie is dense. You do have to pay attention. And Kate, I've said earlier, I've said a few times, it's really the Dune of superhero movies, because
she watched it.
Yeah, because it's just, there's so much you have to watch. You have to pay attention. There's a lot happening, and it's also not for everyone. No,
but I did appreciate for the side characters that were coming, not side characters, because they're all great, but like, I did appreciate, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, the way that they introduced the characters as they are now in little chunks. Like, you get Athena and Gilgamesh in a chunk, and then you allowed that kind of group to form, and then Druid comes in, and then Gilgamesh kind of steps out, and then you have a new, like, point of friction with all of the teammates, and then the next person comes in, Feistus. So it's like you start to, like, get people in little groups, as opposed to, like, getting the band back together all at once.
Yeah, it's more of like, honestly, it's like an Ocean's 11 movie, or an Ocean's movie,
right.
I guess, where it's like you are putting the band back together. They've just happened to known each other for 7,000 years.
And I could feel that they knew each other, and that they'd been through some stuff, and they knew they had, like, as opposed to an Avengers movie where no one knew each other, they all knew their own strengths.
Yeah.
And they all knew their own weaknesses.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really nice, fresh take.
Eric, with a whopping 6 more minutes of your time available to us,
Eric.
I want to take a moment and let's talk about Dane Whitman, who is, again, we're using all the spoilers. He is a character that we all know as the Black Knight. And there were 2 credit sequences. And for me, the second one was the one I was way more excited about, because of this idea that he's going to be the Black Knight in the future. But then there's also that voice that we hear at the end. So I wanted to get your thoughts first, Eric, on that.
I really have to admit, I looked up who the voice was. Like, we were arguing in the car, and then finally my friend was like, all right.
It's Blade, right?
Yeah.
It's Mahershala Ali, and it's Blade, and it's not something that I would have ever expected that Blade to be tied in through the Black Knight. But of course, his name is Blade. That's a Blade. Sure, it all works.
And I got exceedingly excited about a team up I never would have dreamt of, and yet Blade,
but also
Blade, bring it.
And that's his first entrance into the MCU.
Yeah.
That is Blade's entrance into the MCU as an off-camera, are you ready? And I was just like, yes, I am. Because I love Mahershala Ali. I've been excited to see that since they announced it. And I was just like, and I don't even get to see him, and I was very upset.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's like, you show me Harry Styles and you don't show me Mahershala?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you people?
As great as Luke Cage the series was, once they killed off Cottonmouth was his character's name. Once he was gone, so much like steam was let out of that series, and it was still good, but it was like, oh man, they got rid of him way too soon. And so I'm excited to get to see him as Blade, which is a series that the Wesley Snipes Blade, not something that I was excited about. So this is really something. And it's funny because Dominica Saxon sings, so was that voice supposed to be Wesley Snipes? No, Mahershala Ali has been announced as the MCU Blade.
Wesley Snipes still needs to pay his back taxes. He would love to be in the MCU.
As Wesley Snipes says, always bet on back taxes. So I believe that's what he always says. And look, I've said before, the Black Knight was in the Avengers when I read the Avengers every month. I love the character. I really want to see him. Also in the Avengers when I read it every month. was Star Fox, and if I had not been told that that was Harry Styles, I would not have known that that was Harry Styles. And you both missed it,
That's not true. You would have
but
known.
but it
You know.
happened
Yeah.
to our pal Jeff and I. But our other friend Michael Shirley actually spoiled that for us because he thought we knew that Harry Styles was in the movie, and he thought that we
Ah,
knew. And it was worse because he said that he plays Eros, which is Star Fox, and Jeff didn't know what that meant, but I sure did, and that's
oh,
been
you did.
edited out. That's been edited out of that episode as it appears on YouTube.
Michael Shirley's been edited out of every Bladcast episode ever since.
Yeah,
He went back in
no,
time.
Michael Shirley's just
1984
been
stuff.
edited out.
He just
But
there's no
that
X.
still didn't make the scene any less cool. But it's great to see that we're going to have the character. And in your
Also,
final 2
Patton
minutes,
Oswalt. Can
Eric,
we just throw in Patton?
yeah, we'll talk about Patton Oswalt too.
Yay.
But so,
And
so
now 2 different characters in MCU, basically. Although I guess MODOK is not MCU.
well, MODOK, and he was also on Agents of Shield.
Oh my God,
Agents of
you're right,
S.H.I.E.L.D..
right.
Yeah, so he's he is. They love him, and I like
I
him
love
too.
him.
He loves
You know,
them.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I guess that this, unfortunately, look, as a diminutive troll-like man, I can say that this is the part that he was born to play.
Yeah.
So
I've often had my feet described as Hobbit-like. So yeah, no, all for Patton Oswalt being all over the MCU, including I think he could have been Blade, but it just would have taken a bit of work.
yeah. So your thoughts on the future, Eric? What this indicates, the Harry Styles and Patton Oswalt reveal, and really the Black Knight too, all of it. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
about the future? And then Kate and I'll go back to the past once.
Yes,
We'll keep going.
Dance with the Moonlit Night.
Yeah.
All the way
think
back to
it's
Mesopotamia.
I'm gonna sing Babylon, right? Isn't that a song by? Oh no, Avalon, not Babylon. But I'll sing that too.
Sure.
I think what they've done that's smart is they've sort of protected themselves from, let's say, Eternal. I mean, it was at 70 some odd million during COVID.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do second weekend. It's gonna have a pretty big drop, I think. So they've sort of set themselves up. Let's say Eternals just does not quite get the traction it needs to spawn Eternals 2. But by teaming them up with other kind of characters, you could see how if there was Star Fox, how that could get towards the Avengers or even maybe Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Blade with Black Knight. So I think they did something really smart at the end there, which is in essence saying like, yeah, Eternals will return. It doesn't necessarily mean we're getting Eternals 2. But I
Right.
think they've put them in places and sort of kind of like bunch them up in ways that I think we'll see we'll definitely see those characters again. And that's really the thing I want. It's like whether there's an Eternals 2 to me is less important than will I get to hang out with these characters, even if they're mixed with others. Because that was the thing. Even my kids and I were debating, well, who's more powerful? Yes, they're eternal in that they don't age, but does that mean they're more powerful than, I don't know, Thor? And, where does their power stand? So I feel like mixing them with other elements of the MCU is probably the best way to ensure their survival. Because I think just standalone movies for them might not be in the cards.
Sure. Yeah. But whatever it is, I do like these characters and I would like
Yeah.
to see all of them. And I'd like them all to get more time, to develop their stories. And however that works, if that is over the course of 10 movies that they're not starring in, but featured in, that is also absolutely fine. Well, Eric, I know you have to go. If there's any final thoughts you want to share, including the ever important eternal plugs, please take your moment.
Well, yes. Separate from plugs, one, it is exciting to see you guys again. I feel like, yes, I did have my son's bar mitzvah, but I would argue being back on Marvel Movie Talk was the most exciting thing of this month.
That's fair.
Never tell my wife or either of my children or
No.
any of my family members I said that. In fact,
No, and the beauty is they're not watching, so we don't have to worry about that.
Why would they watch me? They have to suffer through me every day. And I'm looking forward to talking about. I'm sorry, what's his name? Hit Dog.
Hit Monkey. Yeah.
Hit Monkey. Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
have
don't know
to
what the
figure
fuck
out
that is, but I'm excited about it.
we have to figure out when we're going to be able to talk about Hit Monkey, and we're going to squeeze that in before we dive into Hawkeye, which will be right before Thanksgiving. So,
And Kate, I want to hear everything about the show you're working on, but I know you can't talk about it, so I'll have to be patient. But I am excited to hear everything you can tell offline because that is a
but,
miniseries I'm so looking forward to.
but
Um,
it's the top secret. So,
yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, we know nothing.
yeah,
So we're just speaking in code now. But guys,
yeah.
thank you. Always pleasure seeing you guys. Yeah, Conner and Connor still out there in the Marvel and the regular universe. Come by and say hi.
All right. Thank you, sir. And we will definitely see you soon. The great Count Eric Connor. But
I love him.
I miss him. I miss everybody. You know, we've been doing some special shows. We talked a lot about Venom. We're talking a lot about Eternals. But it's exciting to have a movie on the scale. And you know,
Yeah.
surprisingly, it has become something of a divisive movie. And Elena and I talked about that in our previous conversation about just, you know, it sort of being where we're at in terms of movie going right now is that people make up their minds about movies without seeing them. And I think if you
Yes.
see anything and you legitimately don't like it, it doesn't matter what your reason is for not liking it. You just didn't like it. But when you say, I won't like that because of my preconceived notion about what it is, well, that's unfortunate. I mean, it's, you
Yeah.
know, people are entitled to handle these things however they want. But I think that people that aren't seeing it are really missing out on what
Me
is a
too.
very unique movie, you know?
And
And
I think it
I,
it says a lot for where the MCU is now able to go. Because it's we've
yeah,
kind of been locked into this, 22 string movie of these started with 6 and then moved to all of these major characters that we love and adore, and now we have something that's slow and 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 it is a long game, literally, because you're going through like 7,000 years of history, but it was less about like when they were, and it was always about like who they were in that time, and them changing, and it's them changing to love this planet and what makes
yeah,
us special. And
yeah,
sometimes what makes us special, and in a way, like the first Wonder Woman movie made the same kind of argument, but it was because it was from one character, it was funneled through one character. Like the Wonder Woman
yeah,
character is kind of like the Cersei kind of tone. Um, and she's like Cersei is literally Mother Earth. Like she's able to change one thing into another thing. And what is that a reference to or a metaphor for than like the best part of humanity? It's like we can turn steam into power, and we can turn, good into great. And we turn objects and things and emotions into better things and useful things. Um, this movie for me was about how precious life is. And I think that's why it needed to be at the pace that it was at. And that's why you needed the cast size of this, because you had all of these different, like once you get to Civil War, you have all of these differing opinions and they're all right. But also the Eros mid credit scene made it very clear that it's like we needed to introduce these 6 characters
yeah,
so that we could split them up. And there's
yeah.
definitely a space contingent that's going to meet the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then there's definitely like the Black Knight needs something to do.
Yeah, no, I know. I think that you're absolutely right. They're going to be able to cover, you know, some very different avenues, and it'll be sort of interesting to see. You know, at one point, I think that when they were going to tell the story, there were going to be more of these characters, and then they realized that, I mean, even streamlining it to 10 is still pretty crazy.
It's still a
But
lot.
to not have 12 obviously made sense. You know, Daniel Drew had a great comment in the chat.
He usually
He's
does,
just like,
Daniel Drew.
that's true. He usually does. And he says he thinks it should have been 2 back-to-back movies, one set in the various pasts, the second in the present. I think that the only problem with that, I think you're right, from a narrative standpoint, that would have been useful. I think that you might not get to your second movie if you do your first movie that way. And I think
And
that
that's
they
the
really wanted to
keep
tell
going.
this story. Yeah, they wanted to tell this story. And I think that yes, that would have been a satisfying way for all of us. But I think from a just an economic standpoint, you needed to really just tell this story, do a little bit of flashbacks. And I'm sorry, Kate, what were you going to say?
Well, what it reminds me of is, Dune was doing that. Dune split
Yeah,
its material up into do 2 movies, and now Denis Villeneuve is saying it might be 3 movies because he might add a third one called
yeah.
Dune Messiah or something like that. I don't need another Dune movie. It's fine.
Just
If
one
there's
was
ever
enough.
like if there's ever like a Dune movie talk, like, I will talk for hours about how the movie could have landed so much better. But it does make sense that Denis and Chloe Zhao were friends. And
Yeah,
they both kind of showed their epics to each other, and Dune did influence how Eternals ended up landing. They're both very similar styles. They're both have very similar pacing. The pacing reminded me a little bit of like old movies from like the late 60s, early 70s before like action movies really hit, like movies like The
yeah,
Godfather, which were really slow. Um, what The Godfather did really well, and I think Chloe Zhao was trying to do with her direction, was the idea of intertextuality, which now I'm mad that Eric's not here, the Mr. Screenwriter. Which is the idea that like certain scenes reference each other and play off of each other, and the differences between those 2 scenes or those 2 images mark the difference of the character. And you get that a lot in movies like The Godfather. Coppola is a master of it. And Chloe was able to do a movie because you had the same characters of the past and the same characters in the present, and they're allowed to change. And so you get these moments of reflection. And then so you could see how Icarus was unmoving and unchanging and needed someone like Cersei who was moving and was, kind-hearted, and was able to change and did want to change and did want to save these people. And you could see the kind of like um intertextuality of their moments to heighten where their characters were at. I actually think that Richard Madden did a great job as Icarus because I always felt that he was hiding something, but I could never put my finger on what it was.
yeah. I think that they did play that aspect of it really well. That obviously he'd known for just thousands of years that the whole
Yeah.
thing was really a sham, and he sort of indulged Cersei, but he also couldn't bear to be around her. And again, this is something that Eric and I were saying, just sort of dealing with just sort of the depth and just the conflict within these characters, which I think anyone who lives 7,000 years or more is really going to have a lot tearing away inside of them. And I think that I just found him to be out of this. I thought that everyone else was really so great that he really stood out for me, and just how underwhelming I found him to be. I mean, you're probably right that this is what was on the page, but I did
Yeah.
find him to be really rather dull. But I don't think that you ruined the movie or anything. I think I just felt like he could have been more.
I think
But it would have been
what
hard
made
anyway. Go
me
ahead.
about that actually was, and I know you've probably talked about Icarus before I got there, but that what I wish was added a little bit more was a more question before it was brought up by Sprite of why wasn't Icarus chosen to lead the team? Like, it was a very unexpected move to pick Cersei. And I don't think that point was clear. And we have that dinner scene where they're all around Gilgamesh's table, and it's like, well, now that Steve Rogers and Iron Man are gone, who's going to lead the Avengers? And Icarus is the first person to say, well, I could lead them, but he's not even
Yeah,
leading the Eternals. So
it is
no.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
I wish that was brought up as like a sticking point, because that might have been a little bit more of like a friction motivation, because he's trying to be like, Cersei was chosen. I care about Cersei. I love Cersei.
Yeah.
But I still was, even though I've known the information for thousands of years. And the only reason is like, once you know somebody for that amount of time, they know all of your tells. Maybe he ran away from Cersei because she would have figured it out.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great insight. It's
And
probably
like
exactly
maybe
what
he
it
tried
was.
to pull, like, the easiest way to save the mission in his mind was to try to pull the sphere out
Yeah.
of Ajax so that he was then in charge, and he couldn't do it. even after he killed her.
Yeah.
And so to have it come out and go right into Cersei, and it's like she was supposed to be chosen from the beginning, and you have this like a little bit of like a distraught aspect to him, I think would have been made the character more interesting. But like the pieces were there. That's what was really weird about some of these. Like, I feel like some of the beats weren't complete, but they were all there. Like to make those connections, but they just weren't like the thread wasn't finished. The last like little thing wasn't sewn together, so it didn't come together seamlessly. Because I'm making conjectures out of beats that are in this movie and relationships that have been established in this movie, but they weren't shown. They were told to me. It was told to me that Sprite loved Icarus. I didn't see it.
No, it just only really, it was already revealed when she then like runs away and is really the only one to side with him. We kind of know that motivation, but yeah, we didn't get to see it develop. There just wasn't nearly enough time. But someone that I think doesn't get enough credit and is sort of the fan favorite, of course, is Karun, who this account on Twitter, let's see, Get Fandom. So
Get Fandom.
They are the ones who created, in the vein for our audio listeners, it is just like all of the single character Eternals posters, but it is for Karun. And I did not get to talk about previously just how enjoyable that character is. It's a lot of fun. The fact that he always has a camera and an extra camera and a replacement camera, there's never anything, that it's, just sort of, he's kind of always there. And look, he has some very deep moments, and, he's a very likable character. And the actor who plays him, Harish Patel, I saw previously in the Hulu series of Four Weddings and a Funeral. He was the father of the character. And it took me a second because I'm like, I was trying to think, I'm like, where have I seen him before? And I'm like, well, there's only a couple of places where you would have seen this guy, And he was great in that, and he was definitely a favorite in this. And look, I think sometimes you need the everyman, you need the human, you need the non-eternal to sort of represent us in those moments.
I loved that they didn't pick Kit Harington. They didn't pick Dane Whitman to be that person, because it was an easy funnel to be like, this person is now like dating an Eternal, and now he's going to go on this adventure with her to help get the band back together with her ex-boyfriend. That's where I thought they were going to go. And then they didn't do that. And then we got this beautiful character, which at the end, like his thank you Eternals as he's leaving with, I'm so bad at these names. I'm usually better at this.
It's hard. And I realized in talking about it a couple times now that if I don't have the character names in front of me, and I usually just try to steer clear of the actor names, because it's like that's like taking on too much,
Yeah.
But it's funny because Eric is actually in the live chat now, continuing to talk about it. Because
that's funny.
I guess there's a lot going on. But something that he did want to mention, he actually texted me that he forgot to mention, was how much he geeked out about hearing Pink Floyd Time in the beginning. And that was a really cool moment, because it's very reminiscent. This is going a little deep, but there's this idea that if you take the Pink Floyd album Dark Side of the Moon and you sync it up to The Wizard of Oz, it fits perfectly. And the moment when Dorothy goes through the door and it turns to color is when all the clocks go off in time. And it's this like, some of it is a little like, I don't know how well, but that is like the craziest timing ever. And it's like, when you see it, you're like, oh shit. So when they had that song in the moment, and then it's like trying to bring us up to speed with the Eternals, I'm like, oh, that's such great usage. And you have to be Disney to be able to license Pink Floyd's for your superhero epics. But as we saw with the Cruella movie, Disney has no problem breaking the budget on music licensing if they think it's what helps.
They've got some really good music people. They're so good. But I also love I think the
And
moment that
and
actually
Eric
hit me,
specifically saying in the chat, Pink Floyd, new favorite music cue in the Marvel universe.
I
You know,
say yes.
yeah. I'm sorry.
My
What were you saying, Kate?
No, but the moment that I think hit me, because we're talking about Karun before, uh, I think the most emotional moment of the movie was actually when he said thank you to the Eternals.
Yeah,
And he was like
yeah.
full on like, it wasn't when Gilgamesh died, it wasn't at the funeral, but it was him going like, thank you for everything you've done. And we really appreciate it.
You
And
know,
just like
and
a
look,
little, his goodbye
Daniel
was,
Drew,
yeah,
Daniel Drew always being so prescient. He's saying exactly what you are. Just when
in
he
less
left,
words.
just knowing the fact that like in his expectation we were all going to die, and he's like, well,
Yeah.
thank you, you know, because it's like, what
Thank you
else?
for
Yeah, you
everything you
guys
did.
tried. Yeah.
And it's like, these are the gods, like this is Marvel does mythology. And can we please talk about Athena and Gilgamesh for a hot sec before I know we have to like
Just
it's hard.
Thena, by the way, not Athena. She makes
Athena,
it
drop
clear
the A,
she's
drop the
Thena.
A.
Yeah. Angelina Jolie.
Angelina
Yeah.
Jolie.
And look, Elena said that previously. She said that she wants that movie. You know, the flashback,
Yeah.
Thena and Gilgamesh movie. Like, yeah, what did they do for all those thousands of years? Let's just see that. You know,
I would just love
I would love that.
Athena. I would love Athena movie. It's so hard because it's
I know
Athena.
to put before. I know it's like Thena.
You have to like
Yeah.
hammer down as like Athena movie. Athena.
Yeah.
I want her movie where it's just like almost like Last Night in Soho, but in her mind. Like
Did you
what's
see Last
real,
Night in Soho,
what's
by the way?
not. I did.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about that separately.
We
See,
need
look
to
at all
talk
these
about
like
it.
separate, look, all these other movies we have to talk about at some point. But
I think we should just create another like Marvel movie podcast, and then we just create other stuff.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like
other things.
after every episode, there's like an addendum. You know, it's like the
Yeah. If you
postscript.
haven't seen Last Night in Soho, please see it. But the basic plot of the film is there's a girl who goes to London and she sees ghosts and she lives in London, and the previous tenant of her apartment, she keeps getting visions of her life and her murder.
Yeah. And there's a
And
Marvel
it's
tie-in because that actress Anna Taylor-Joy was Magic in the New Mutants, and there's a nerd
Yeah.
tie-in because Matt Smith was the Doctor in Doctor Who.
Doctor.
So you know,
really good casting on that movie. But the
great casting. Yeah,
the visions start to become a little bit like we don't know when it's real and when it's a vision
Yeah.
sometimes, and when do the
So,
visions start to invade.
so
And I would
you're
really
thinking like a story like that for Thena, like sort
Yes.
of that, like watching how she doesn't know what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
into
think that
Mad
would be-
Weary completely, especially when she doesn't have Gilgamesh to help her.
Yeah,
And because basically for me, for, personal time, my grandmother has dementia, and for me, I was watching a superhero version of dementia,
yeah,
and someone who wasn't all world, but someone who was the most powerful. Arguably, Icarus can fly, whatever, cool, but like she was a warrior. And so you're watching someone who was a warrior deteriorate. And I think a lot of people who live with people with dementia have that kind of sadness. And then it's like when she realizes that she went back into the past or she went back into another memory. And then you realize you're not crazy. You're just remembering other things and we're just not on your plane.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
you're being invaded by other planets that you've been to and other, things. Like your wipe didn't work in a way. I would really like to see the world through her eyes. And I would really like to see her struggle and I think that would be a really interesting film. So Kevin Feige, if you're listening,
and he is. Yeah.
I want to make this film. And you should
Yeah,
talk to
come
me
on.
at this tag.
Yes, it's over there.
Right? It's right there. It's right
Something
there.
that we have neglected in past conversation about this, Ghost 8386. Seeing Arishem the Judge on the big screen was marvelous. That was some very impressive CGI work and sort of character development, and just sort of overwhelming and crazy. Go ahead.
And I saw it in IMAX, so it was freaking nuts.
Yeah.
Also, Patton is an exception because Patton is an amazing voice actor. But a lot of these movies do A-list stars for their voice acting roles.
Sure.
Arishem was voiced by an amazing, amazing, amazing voice actor, and I have to give him credit because he's one of my favorites. His name is David Kaye, and he's voiced by an incredible actor. He used to be in Canada, now he's in the United States. You've probably heard his voice if you watch Last Week Tonight.
Oh, we got Kate a little frozen there. So she was giving credit to the voice actor for. Yeah, sorry, we lost you a little bit there. It got a little choppy.
It's okay, but he's an incredible voice actor, and I'm really glad that they made that choice.
Yeah, no, I think that was great, and Daniel is kind of saying something. Just I want all the Celestials. More Celestials. I think sort of the way that it ends with Arishem, the judge, is like, I am going to see now what you did. I'm going to see if what you did was worth it, because I'm pretty pissed. But let me.
Well, they played judge and jury. They played judge, jury, and executioner on One of His Kind, and went against their mission. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. I would like to know too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it'll be interesting to see. I think that, to Eric's point, it'll largely be a financial decision if there's an Eternals 2. But look, the Ant-Man movies are not the most lucrative, and they did a sequel anyway, and they're doing a third one. I
don't know if there will be a sequel. I think they're going to be pulled into other things.
I think they're going to get pulled into other things for a while. I don't think their next story is a second one, but I think that there will be another one, because they feel like they're going to need. I think that we'll also be more invested in these characters as we see them more throughout the course of a number of other movies coming up, and then I think people will, in say 4 or 5 years, be more excited for an Eternals 2 than they were for Eternals 1, and I think sort of building up some connection to these characters. And look at this. Daniel Drew with the fact, by the way, that Daniel Kaye voiced Professor Xavier in X-Men Evolution.
Yes! I knew you would know it.
See, this is Daniel Drew is and always has been our spirit animal, and we appreciate that. Plus, I
liked him in
the fact that he'll stay up until 1 a.m. or later with us. That's always appreciated. So thank you. So let's.
But I did agree to make it a film and not a miniseries at the end. So that was my thing. Everyone's like, it should be a miniseries because there's so many characters, and I'm like, I think it's a movie.
Yeah. What are some other things that come to mind? Things that you felt really strongly about, things that you really liked, anything that, just sort of didn't connect right for you. You're like, oh, this didn't work. Anything that, as you've thought about the movie since you saw it a few days ago, what are some of the enduring thoughts that we haven't had a chance to touch on before we wind down this little aspect of our hoedown here?
To the point of the second Eternals will probably be more widely accepted than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Captain America First Avenger first came out, and that wasn't well received when it came out either.
It's my favorite MCU movie.
And it's now like a fan favorite of the MCU because of how it stood the test of time. I'm not saying Eternals is going to have that same, bandwidth or that same acceptance, but I do think that it's a better movie that will be better over time. That we'll look back on it and be like, you know what? Maybe a little bad like that.
Yeah.
Maybe just
it's like the way they keep trying to
on the bandwagon.
It's like the way they keep trying to get us to reconsider Thor: The Dark World, except we're always like, no, we were right about that. I know you wanna.
No, we were right.
You keep trying to make Thor: The Dark World happen, and it's not going to. So
that's just not going to happen, guys.
But it could happen for Eternals.
It could happen for Eternals, and it did happen. The other movie that's kind of getting a weird, like, you know what? Age of Ultron wasn't as bad as this. Like, when we start rethinking things, so we kind of have to still, as fans and as long-term fans, like, we've been watching these movies for like a long freaking time, guys, and I think we still have to take that. We've been living these stories; these will never end. And I was trying to tell my friend, like, it's like wrestling. it is like comic books. Like they're not going to just end. They're just going to keep evolving.
Yeah.
And they do listen. I mean, she was a fan that went to Kevin and went, "We need to make a movie about this." And she was originally supposed to get another movie, and then she pitched Eternals, and that's why she got this movie. But it's like, listen, I mean, that's why they did such a left turn to do Ragnarok from Dark Worlds, because it wasn't working.
Yeah.
So the best part about the people who make these movies is they're never solid. They keep evolving, they keep changing, they keep bringing in new blood, they keep bringing in new people, and now we have a plethora of cast that we've never really seen in a Marvel universe to choose from and to play with. I mean, Makari, I think, is the shining star of this film. I mean, we spend
Yeah.
a lot of time with Cersei Icarus. We spend a lot of time like kind of being almost haunted by this ghost of Ajak who keeps coming back in. Not ghost, but like, you know, she keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And then Athena and Gilgamesh have their thing, and then the Deviants have their thing. We'll talk about the Deviants in a second. But Makari was an incredible force in this movie. And
Lauren Ridloff is that actress's name, and she's fantastic. And left sitting reading books on the ship for an awful lot of the movie. And we could have used more of her, but what we got was great. And
but it's
the
like
potential
Endgame and
for
Infinity War.
whatever's going on with her and Druig that people don't like. I'm like, yeah, we can use more of that too.
What did he say? What did he say? He was just like, "Is this a new thing? Because I'm not down with. I don't like it."
Yeah, that's pretty much what he said. Yeah.
So good.
Just want to interject a comment from the chat from Uvula
Please.
Scrimshaw. If the Roger
Yes.
Corman Fantastic Four movie can be considered a classic, there's hope for any movie. I contend that the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie is still the best Fantastic Four movie that we've had. The two with Chris Evans, I mean, the first one was at least okay. The more recent one with Kate Mara and Michael B. Jordan, as fantastic as he is, that movie was so bad. And
I couldn't get through
hopefully
it.
one day we get an actual great Fantastic Four movie. I went to see that in the movie theater, that Fantastic Four movie. I'm like, I always see these movies, I have to. So
I also
this
love
is
this.
interesting.
Yeah.
I would love it if the creatures in
We're on the same wavelength.
Shang-Chi were deviants. And, this is something that I was saying after Shang-Chi was the rings being somehow tied to the deviants or whatever. And honestly, the rings that Fastos came up with that they were all bound together. I'm like,
10 of them.
They look an awful lot like the 10 rings. Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's true. There weren't 10 of them, but you're right. But, so I don't know. I just felt like, okay, we're getting this, and I think it's all going to tie together. But this is a good way to sort of steer our conversation as we steer it into the barn. Talk a little bit about the deviants and sort of this idea that they weren't really the bad guys, were they?
No.
I mean, the Eternals were.
It's like because you're them. It was that whole argument of just like, then we become them. Like, we're the same thing. And that we are all creatures of this planet, or creatures of our creator, wherever you prescribe. And they evolved, and their evolution was not deemed appropriate, because then they became the apex predator. So a new apex predator had to be created that wouldn't evolve. But it evolved anyway, because the Eternals evolved into a new sense of thinking that in life finds a way. And that they come to a planet where evolution is a necessity. It's a requirement that they had to kind of inject into an already evolving intelligent society, and had to basically like make us move faster. and it became very clear to me when the deviants started taking the powers and then got the information. And then the more powers they got, the more humanoid they got. The more they started to copy what they were supposed to look like, or what they wanted to be. In a way, it was a very Ultron thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's a solid comparison,
And
absolutely, and
what's the best way to become an apex predator? It's take what makes them
right.
apex.
Yeah, I think that the reveal and sort of the twist in this was, I think, incredibly well done, and between that and Mahershala Ali, I'll take having Harry Styles spoiled. The fact that these other things weren't spoiled, I was like, all right, well, if something had to be, then I guess it was the fact that that I remember, I almost called him a Backstreet Boy, that a member of One Direction would be joining the MCU. But it's interesting because friend of this show and my friend Katie Kawamoto, who has
Yeah.
been on a few times, she actually posted that the idea that Harry Styles is joining the MCU is like as widely appreciated as this series, this universe, this shared universe, this
Yeah.
multiverse is. You're opening the door to something totally different when you put somebody like Harry Styles into a film series, So it'll be interesting to see what that does, where they put him. He'll certainly be in Avengers movies. He is
Yeah.
Thanos' brother. There's so much to do with that character that I think he'll probably get a standalone movie before there's an Eternals 2 for sure.
Definitely. And I think that they're using Harry Styles to start to adjust the humor of everything. So like as Taika Waititi's Ragnarok really influenced the way that the humor went, and shifted into the MCU, I think they're starting to try to read ahead a little bit of where film audiences are headed. Maybe and people might be getting tired of the kind of how the banter plays because it's still very some of the banter does read a little bit like Tony Stark, no matter how you kind of slice it. So they're trying to figure out like how do we keep it like how do we keep things moving and how do we challenge our universe? And I think the Eternals movie, for all of its faults and all of its great points, it's one of the most cinematically beautiful things that the MCU has put out. It's also one of the most character problematic things that MCU has put out. But it's still a part of the universe and it's still part of what we play and it's now moving forward as part of the universe. And so I think they're using Eternals to gauge as a thermometer what works and what doesn't so that they
Yeah.
know what to pull forward because Marvel was really good at seeing the curve before anyone else did. Because there was that moment when, the team movies came out and Guardians came out and DC went, "Oh crap." Like we need a
Yeah.
team movie.
No, I mean, honestly, I've said this before that Guardians of the Galaxy was the real turning point
Yeah.
because that's when they realized that you can take these characters that people don't really know and you can turn it into something. And yes, you have to align yourself with the right talent. James Gunn made the Guardians of the Galaxy what it was. Another director would have made something very different, and who knows how it would have connected. So they felt like Chloe Zhao was going to give them something that really matched the vision that they had and this idea. And as you referenced that, she pitched Eternal, she wanted it. It was like she was passionate about it. So please let her
Yeah.
run with it. So it is very exciting to see where it goes. And yeah, I mean, I think that we will. I'm interested in seeing these characters interact with other MCU established characters.
Yeah.
Whether they be Dr. Banner or Carol Danvers or Stephen Strange, whoever it is. I think it'll be
Right.
interesting to see once they actually start interacting and being a real part of the MCU, because this movie, they reference it, there's talk about it, but they're not actually a part of the MCU on screen. We don't see sort of those ramifications.
Right.
There's some, there's news coverage of something crazy going on, but there's not like little cutaways of Doctor Strange is like, should I go take a look at that, or anything like that. So I don't know, I think it'll be great to see.
Yeah.
But
There is
in
a
any
suspension of disbelief that has to be applied to this universe, which we did apply to like, why doesn't, the Hulk come help with other things or why doesn't, the teams like, when during the Spider-Man movie, like why doesn't someone else come in and help him? Because New York is obviously being attacked. Um we still have to do and we had to do a little bit of the same thing with going forward with the snap. And we're going to have to keep doing that with these team up movies when we're getting some of these kind of like comic books do, like the comics do. It's like you start adding new characters into these things, and I think we're as an audience we're going to have to work a little harder to suspend our disbelief, because it's like this is the story they wanted to tell, and if we got everyone involved, there would be no story.
Yeah.
So
in terms of getting them involved, Daniel Drew again with a great comment. Maybe some of them somehow guessed in Guardians 3 since it just started production. I mean, I do feel like that will be where your spacefaring Eternals can factor in, maybe in a small role. I do think that we will get a lot. There'll be a lot happening in that Guardians 3, although I think we're getting the Guardians Christmas special on Disney Plus before the actual movie.
Didn't James Gunn write that because he was inspired by the Star Wars one?
Yeah, which you want to talk about something that requires its own podcast would be the Star Wars Holiday Special. Happy Life Day to everyone.
Happy
by the way.
Life Day, everyone.
Life Day is coming up very soon.
It is.
Before we completely say goodbye, I do want to make sure that I let everyone know what our continued conversation will be. So you can join us tomorrow for a Marvel Movie Talk special at 12:10 p.m. Pacific time, 3:10 Eastern. It'll be a special, what I'm calling a Marvel Movie Talk Extra, with a very special guest, our friend Roxy Stryer from AfterBuzz and Marvel Movie Talk and all that, for a solid 30 minutes of Eternals talk. So it is an extra, but I've been itching to talk to Roxy about this. We were at the same screening, sort of. There were like 5 of them, and she got there early enough that she got to the IMAX screening. And Daniel is asking if that is a live show or a live premiere, because our previously recorded episodes are live premieres. That will be a live episode. So you can join us in the chat again tomorrow at 12:10 p.m. Pacific time. And Roxy will be there. She's got a solid 30 minutes. She's literally squeezing me in between 2 shows that she's already doing, and I appreciate it greatly. And we love that she will be able to be there with us. So please check that out tomorrow. I'll tweet out the link in a little bit. But that's tomorrow. Let's bring it back to today. Kate, we appreciate you taking the time. We miss you. I know that you're so busy. I'm glad that we have to miss you because it means that you're busy working. But it hurts a little inside that you don't have time to hang out with us.
I'll get
we
it
don't
back.
We don't take it personally, but we'll have to figure out some way to include you into future shows.
Yes.
And if people want to keep in touch with you, how do they do that?
They do it by going this way. Yeah, did it. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah.
At Cornellable on Instagram and TikTok, and I am posting more videos. I did film some this weekend, guys, because Eternals really inspired me to get that ish moving. So there will be more Marvel movie videos and more commentary on things. And you can always DM me if you want to keep chatting about Marvel stuff.
Yeah, and we will find a way to continue talking Marvel with you in the near future. As always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Please subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel, because we do special episodes like this one that we're doing right now, where it's live. Sometimes it's a live premiere where we recorded it earlier. And, you never really know for sure when we're going to be around. So if you subscribe, you'll always know when we're coming your way. But also, if you follow me on Twitter, I do my best to try and let everybody know what is happening. And it's interesting conversation in the chat. Ghost 8386 can't wait for the Eternals on Blu-ray. And Dominicus Saxon says, I hope the Blu-ray has a lot of extra scenes to make the story fuller. Yeah, even with like a 2-hour and 37-minute runtime, you have to know that there's probably a solid 25 minutes of extra stuff that will only help, I think, the enjoyment of the movie. And yes, I am always one to welcome all of the longer, in-depth deleted scenes
and bloopers.
That's
I mean,
true.
we only really get the DVDs for the bloopers anymore until they come out
Yeah.
on YouTube, and then we don't need the DVD anymore.
Right, exactly. And Daniel's like, just imagine the case art for the Blu-ray and DVD, and yeah, because if you just buy it digitally, you're not going to get all that, and you won't have to take up room on your shelf. In any case, thanks again to Count Eric Conner on
Yeah.
Twitter and Instagram at Count Eric Conner, and of course Kate at Cornellable, and I'm at Christian DMZ. Thanks to everybody who joined us in the live chat, especially for those of you for whom this was a very late conversation. We will hopefully see as many of you as possible tomorrow. But until then, as the great Stan Lee would say, Excel.